All right, John, whenever you're ready, you can feel free to take it away.
Great. Thanks, Drew. Yes, I'm John Thompson. I'm the director of the Catskill Regional Invasive Species Partnership, and thanks for having me here today to chat with you about the what we do at CRISP and um, what we're involved with and some of the future plans that we have. Um, Hopefully, we'll have time for questions at the end, and I'd be happy to chat with anyone more about collaborating on anything or if you're interested in any funding we might have available, then I'd be really happy to chat with you about that. Let's see. Just to start with, New York State defines an invasive species in the Environmental Conservation Law, Title 17, Article 9, 2008, as having two attributes. One is that it's not native to the ecosystem, and the second is that it causes harm to the economy, human health, or the environment. So um, if it's uh, if it doesn't meet those criteria, then in New York State, we don't consider it to be an invasive species. So in order to recognize the threat of invasive species, New York State established 8 partnerships for regional invasive species management, shown here in the map on the right. Um,
Hey,
it,
John, I'm sorry to interrupt, but I don't think your slides changed over on the screen. There might be a,
oh, okay.
yeah.
They're not changing. I wonder if this is open twice. Let me try to open it again. Sorry about that.
No, it's okay. I
Um,
just, you said the
no,
map.
thanks for letting me know.
Make sure you could see the map.
Um, did this and then okay, are you seeing the first slide
I'm seeing
then?
the first slide. Yep, the cover slide.
Okay. Let me see if and it
Oh,
changed
there
for
we
you?
go. Yep,
Okay, so
changed.
this is sorry about that. So this is how New York State defines an invasive species. It has to have these two attributes of being non-native and in the ecosystem that you're considering, and then it causes some kind of harm. So these, and as I mentioned, in order to recognize that the threat of invasive species, New York State established 8 partnerships for regional invasive species management, shown here in the map. Um, and each one of those has a coordinator like myself. It has a terrestrial invasive species manager, an aquatic invasive species manager, um, education staff. Some of these prisms also have a boat stewards program. All of them are funded from the Environmental Protection Fund of New York State through New York State DEC. And on the left here, you can see the mission of CRISP. It's to promote education, prevention, early detection, and control of invasive species to limit their impact on the ecosystems and economies of the Catskills. So each of these prisms was started to look at invasive species issues regionally to come up with some regional solutions, but we also work through the state network to um, address invasive species issues at a state level. The CRISP region itself, to zoom in here, in the red line is the outline of the CRISP region. It's about 3.3 million acres. You can also see the blue line of 400,000 acres, the Catskill blue line within this map. The CRISP region includes all of Delaware, Otsego, and Schoharie counties, most of Greene County, most of Ulster County, most of Sullivan County, and a little bit of Orange County. And the major landowners are shown on the map here. DC manages over 400,000 acres, mostly within the blue line. And then DEP manages over 154,000 acres in their west of Hudson Reservoir system. So that's providing 90% of the water supply for 10 million people. So these are really important partners that we have, along with a lot of other partners and collaborators working within our region. Just to give you a introduction to our CRISP staff, there's myself. Dan Snyder NERP is our terrestrial invasive species manager, shown on the right here, and then below him in the pictures is Sarah Coney. She's our aquatic invasive species manager. And then Sammy Delaney is our volunteer coordinator. She works half-time for the CRISP program, and then the other half of her time she's working on volunteer programs within the Catskill Center itself. So each PRISM, or Partnership for Regional Invasive Species Management, has a host organization. Our host is the Catskill Center, so we're Catskill Center employees, and we run the program through the Catskill Center. So to give you a sense of, like I said, we're managing an area of 3.3 million acres. We have to have some priority on what we do. So I'm sure all of you are familiar with this invasion curve. I'm showing it because hopefully will give you a sense of why, how we set our priorities and why we're choosing the priorities that we are in management. So I don't know if you can see my cursor, but this invasion curve shows that an invasive species is introduced at one point, then over time it will spread, and the control cost to manage it will increase. These boxes that you see here, each has a label on them, tier 1, tier 2, tier 3, and tier 4, and it's labeled within the box. So tier 1, can you see my cursor? Okay, tier 1 is prevention. That's the most effective way to deal with invasive species. If you can prevent them from getting there in the first place, then they're not going to spread within your area. Eradication is the second level of management that we would do once an invasive species is introduced, but it's still at a small enough number and there's a feasible eradication method. Then you can work on eradicating it. An issue that we have is a challenge is that public awareness usually doesn't begin until further up the curve here. So by that time, it may be too late for any eradication efforts, obviously too late for any prevention. So we are trying to be most efficient in managing invasive species, and we're mostly working in here in the prevention and eradication boxes. Once something gets pretty widespread, then as you can see from the graph here, the control costs are really high. It gets difficult to manage. So things that are widespread, you need to have a clear goal, feasible goal about managing it, and you're probably going to be doing it at a local level as opposed to the regional scale that we're working at. So anyone that contacts us with any of these tier 4 invasive species homeowners or land managers, we will work with them as much as we can, and we'll provide them best management practices. We do trainings on how to manage invasive species and how to come up with an invasive species management plan. But some people will contact me. They want me to come out and take out their Japanese barberry, and that's not what we do. But we try to help them as much as we can. So the CRISP tiers themselves, those different levels of invasive species that I just went over, we come up with those working with other experts that are familiar with the invasive species, where it is within the CRISP region. We collaborate with them to come up with the tiered list. We review it every year. And we also do what's called horizon scanning, looking out beyond CRISP, beyond our borders, what's approaching us, what has a pathway in order to get here that we should be addressing. Um, and then for this tiered list, we want to make this available and transparent to people so they can have a sense of what our priorities are. So we list all these species on our website and what tier they're in. It's also listed on the New York IMAP Invasives website. And as I was pointing out on the graph, our priorities are primarily going to be tier 1 and tier 2, and we'll offer management plan recommendations for any other invasive species that people might be working on. And we review this list every year. We're adapting our list as we get new info. There's new introductions occasionally, or pretty frequently maybe. And then we are able to eradicate populations or drive populations lower. So um, uh, uh, how something is listed on that tiered list may change over time. And then when we do an annual request for proposals, this will have our priorities in it, that we're really focused on these tier 1 and tier 2 and what to do about them. Just to drill down a little deeper into the tier 2s, our goal, as I mentioned, would be eradication. And this is how it's defined. Tier 2 species are known to occur at low populations within the PRISM boundary, and all are potentially high impact and currently low abundance, with known control measures that make eradication attainable as a management goal. So you can see if there's not a known control measure, it may not be listed as a tier 2. Something like beech leaf disease, which is it's now widespread, but there isn't a known management tool that could be used at a landscape scale in order to counteract that pathogen. So these are some of the tier 2 species that we're working on, and the map on the right is a heat map showing kind of the density of some of these tier 2 species, and it gives you a sense of where we're working and that they're pretty widespread over the CRISP region in terms of geographically, but their populations may be somewhat low. So we're working on giant high, and I'll mention also that I winnowed down things that are just within the Delaware River watershed. And they include giant hogweed, mile-a-minute, Japanese angelica tree, Japanese tree lilac, Japanese hops, hardy kiwi, and winter creeper. These are all species that we've at least surveyed for. A lot of them we're doing treatments of. The aquatic species that we're working on include European frogbit, which is a tier 2, and then we're working on one tier 3, that's water chestnut, where management is feasible under certain conditions, and it can be successfully managed. So that's why we're working on it. Another strategy that we've started using over the last few years is developing invasive species prevention zones. So these are the criteria that we're using, basically using GIS to rank the conservation value of different areas. These are some of the criteria that we used to define those invasive species prevention zones. It includes that there's a lack of invasive species as far as we know at this point. And there's usually rare species and rare ecological communities. There could be first growth forest, unfragmented forest blocks, wetlands, and protected land. And some of the areas that came out as high conservation value include 2,000 acres. They're all managed by DEC. And one strategy that we came up with to try to protect those sites would be to establish boot brush stations at some of the trailheads. So we're doing that at a few of the DEC trailheads. And just to give you a sense of what we're working on right now, some of the metrics that we have for management and surveys. We've surveyed 2,412 acres of water bodies and uplands, and some of those acres were in those invasive species prevention zones, which, as I mentioned, lack invasive species, but we want to survey to see if there are species moving in or species that haven't been documented previously. And then out of the area we've surveyed where we have found invasive species, we've treated 161 acres of those um, invasive species this year. We do a lot of outreach, trainings, workshops. This year we've done 49 programs for 1,266 participants, which is, I think, great for 3.5 staff. And that out of those programs, we've done 21 trainings for 95 people, and out of those trainings, 13 of them have focused on IMAP invasives, and those have been for 75 participants. We've also done eDNA sampling. We started that. Saraconi is a backpack eDNA sampler. We've done some sampling in the Delaware River watershed. We've done sampling in the Susquehanna, and we're going to be expanding that. The Catskill Center just got a grant to help support some of that work. So this upcoming year in 2026, we'll be doing more sampling in the Susquehanna, and then we're also sampling in the Hudson River watershed. And then Dan Snyder has been working on habitat suitability modeling using machine learning and looking at the effectiveness of different models to be able to anticipate where invasive species might be invading in the future. So I mentioned this IMAP invasives. New York IMAP invasives is the major database that we're using to collect our data. This is what we train people to do observations on. So we do a lot of trainings for people to identify invasive species and then to report them through New York IMAP invasives. It's a database that's online. It's also an app, so it's relatively easy to use where people can identify invasive species, take a picture of it, upload that information to IMAP invasives. An expert will look at their information and could confirm their data to just that it was correctly identified. And like I said, we're using that information to track where invasive species might be, how much of invasives there are. And also we use it to track where we're doing surveys. We're mapping where we're doing treatments and uploading all that information into IMAP invasives. So it's a great resource for anybody that is studying invasive species or wants to look at some of the work that's being done on invasive species in New York State and in other areas too. We started this year a lake macrophyte survey that's looking at native and invasive plants, specifically in White Lake. We started working with the White Lake Association on doing surveys within their lake. Sarah trained 6 people that were out this summer and doing rake tosses to collect plants from the bottom of the lake and identify them and to look for invasive species. And we're hoping to replicate that with other lake associations. So we're looking for partners to collaborate with on that. And this is another project that we've been working on. This is outside of the Delaware River watershed, but I'll just mention it just as something else we're doing. We are working with New York City DEP on an area near the Ashokan Rail Trail in Chokan. It's an area where the ash trees were killed by emerald ash borer, and then it was invaded by a number of different invasive plants, including buckthorn, multiflora rose, and Asian bittersweet, honeysuckles, etc. And we started working there last year. We've removed invasives over an acre of area, and we've planted 330 native tree seedlings to try to restore that forest. There were big forest gaps from all the ash trees that were killed by the emerald ash borer. We've had 127 volunteers that have contributed 305 hours since last year. So it's been a successful program and one that we're hoping to grow over time. We're also doing hemlock conservation. This is mainly collaboration at this point, but we continue to monitor hemlock woolly adelgid. We're collaborating with the New York State Hemlock Initiative on biocontrol releases, helping them to choose any new sites that they may want to do releases on. We've created an insectary at Thorn Preserve that we've been maintaining for a number of years where we want to be able to release biocontrol there to be able to raise it on our own. And then this year, I'm also working with a Catskill Science Collaborative Fellow who's taken some of the stands that we started monitoring in 2014 and gone out to those stands to see what the condition of the hemlocks are and what's coming up in the understory and some of these declining hemlock stands. So that's been a great use of some of the data that we've collected over time. Just wanted to mention, I'm not sure if we're actually going to offer funding this year. I hope we can, but I'm trying to work through budgeting for next year. This is an example from this past year, what we put out for funding priorities for CRIS. We've been able to put out a request for proposals every year to be able to fill in gaps that we have in the work that we're doing and the priorities that we've set. So this shows some of the priorities that we have, and then the bullets are actually actions that were identified in our strategic planning that we did in 2022. For instance, training stakeholder groups to perform management was an action that was highly ranked when we went through our strategic planning process. Moving down to the raising awareness, working with local governments to build invasive species management and to planning review is a priority that we've set. And we've been working with the organization that does trainings for planning boards, and we developed a brochure that we want to get out to planning boards on that shows them how to incorporate invasive species information into their planning review. And then just to hop down to the third one, improve the scientific understanding of the extent, ecological impact, and effective controls of invasive species in the CRISP region. That's an action that was ranked as high priority when we did our strategic planning and something that we're always working on and trying to expand with partners. And then just to further explain some of the strategic planning where we are. So we've been as a staff working on our priorities that were developed in our strategic plan. And we also have a CRISP steering committee, and the steering committee helps us to set strategic priorities for our PRISM. We realized, the steering committee has realized that there are some actions that were identified in our strategic plan that were ranked as high priority that we weren't getting to. So they formed working groups, and there's specifically 6 working groups here that are working on these different strategic actions that we want to do. The first one is forest regeneration, recognizing that just removing invasive plants won't restore a forest, but we need to also take into account, try to improve forest regeneration in an area that lacks forest regeneration. So we've offered programs like the photo on the right shows a forest regeneration program that we did in partnership with DEP this summer. We went out to some deer exclosures on DEP lands. We had 31 people involved in this program, and we got to see what it looks like inside their exclosures, areas where they're going to do slash walls, and talk about forest regeneration as an issue and what some of the solutions might be. And that's something that we'll continue to work on over time. Then our local government working group is, as I mentioned, working. One thing that they've developed is a brochure for planning boards. We're looking to expand our training of planning board members to show them how they could incorporate invasive species management into some of the project review that they're doing. Some of our partners have construction best management practices to try to decrease and mitigate the impacts and the spread of invasive species that we want to share through our website. Myelin and stiltgrass are two annual invasive species that Myelin is a tier 2. Stiltgrass is spreading rapidly throughout our region and maybe having impacts on forest regeneration. We're looking at ways to try to expand the research that's been done on those species in terms of um, best management practices, most effective management, and managing for those species. We'd like to encourage people that are early in their careers to be able to pursue a career in invasive species management to continue the great work that a lot of people are doing these days. So last year we had a early career development program. We had over 40 people there. It was a workshop to show people how to work on their resumes, what to do in interviews and things like that to try to encourage people uh, to um, to do their best in trying to pursue jobs, and also being able to share through our website any internships that people have in the summer, seasonal work that they have. So there's been a lot of interest in that, and it's something that we want to build on over time. And then Success Stories is another working group that we have. People are pulling together some narratives about volunteers and other folks that have observed invasive species and reported them and done the right thing. And we want to just promote those type of stories and that behavior so people will continue to do that over time. So there's a lot of work that we're doing. It's a lot focused on management, but we're always trying to improve what we're doing, become more efficient, how we're managing invasive species, and partnering with other organizations to leverage what we're doing to be more effective over a landscape scale. So that's my contact information here. I'd be happy if there's time, Drew, I can answer any questions. Um, and that shows our website. The Catskill Invasives is the CRIS website, and then the Catskill Center as a website where there's some invasive species information offered, but all of our events go on both websites. So if you're interested in any trainings or workshops or any programs that we're doing, then we have them all listed there. Then below that is the general email address that actually comes to me, or the general phone number extension if someone wanted to reach me. So thanks for your time, and I'd be happy to answer any questions if anybody has any.
Thank you, John. That was great. I'm going to stop the recording if anybody wants to ask any questions off of the recording.